If you were on YouTube back in 2016, there's a big chance one of the people you were watching was iDubbbz. Back then, he was one of the most respected channels in commentary and on the website in general due to his videos, with his series Content Cop gaining him most of his loyal fans. Due to the series, he had developed a reputation as a YouTube channel killer of sorts, even though he never really killed a channel throughout any of the Content Cops. And because of that, he was generally seen as untouchable, and nobody would even think about criticizing him. But gradually throughout the past couple of years, this perception of iDubbbz would completely fade away, as more and more people would get annoyed at his changing opinions about edgy humor and YouTube as a whole, as well as some of the recent stuff he's gotten into. So with this video, I'm going to be going over some of the recent events that caused his reputation to worsen over time, defend and criticize him when needed, and I'll try to see how big his downfall actually was. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Before I get into this segment, no, I am not covering the OnlyFans stuff. That's been done to death at this point for the past 3 years, and I can't really say anything else about it. Instead, I want to talk about iDubbbz's next controversy after that point to start off. I'm also going to be using the words iDubbbz and Ian interchangeably in every section in this video, so let's get into it. I'm sure most of the people watching this know who Leafy is. Hell, you might even know who he is due to the content cop Ian made on him back in 2016. After his short-lived comeback to YouTube in 2020, his entire channel was terminated for harassment and bullying reasons. Public opinion was split about YouTube's decision here, with people like me and others having the opinion that Leafy shouldn't have been banned, and others that wanted him gone due to YouTube's guidelines on harassment and bullying. There was also a significant amount of people straight up celebrating his ban as well, including H3H3 and a few others, which caused commentary channels to start heavily criticizing these guys. But someone who also got caught in the middle of everything was iDubbbz, and he was also heavily criticized for his opinion. For some context, iDubbbz went on the Create Unknown podcast in late 2020, where one of the topics was Leafy's ban. So did iDubbbz celebrate Leafy's ban? Did he say that it was deserved and Leafy shouldn't have been bullying people? No, not at all. In fact, he had a completely fair take about everything. I'll play a clip of what he said in a second, but to sum it up, Ian's take was essentially just being unsurprised that Leafy was terminated. He pointed out the fact that Leafy's content did go against YouTube's new guidelines and that he should have adapted to it.
So it'll just keep going, but it's not like what people say, I think, with the whole slippery slope thing, or it sets a scary precedent. It's like, it's not a scary precedent. It's exactly what's expected. It's gonna keep happening. If you want to continue to make that content and or support that content, just fuck it. Like, if you think there's actually an audience for it, you have to go on Patreon or Gumroad or one of these websites that'll allow you to make it without fear of losing your, ability to make it.
Now, I certainly don't think people should have to adapt their videos to YouTube's strict guidelines just to be able to stay on the platform, and I also think that Leafy's ban was pretty uncalled for. I don't think he's some sort of boogeyman that was making super problematic content. He was just an edgy kid who liked to make fun of people, and nothing was off the table for him. That might be seen as downplaying what he was doing, but please tell me what exactly Leafy was doing other than that. I'd appreciate it. I also believe there should be more room for creativity and boundary pushing content. I was a fan of people like Filthy Frank and iDubbbz back in the day, and more experimental content that's not going to hurt anybody. But clearly that's not the angle that YouTube wants to go for. They want advertisers to go to their site. Boundary pushing content can give them bad press. And that was Ian's point in the podcast. They've been making this clear for years now. That being said, if you want to criticize Ian for stopping his edgy content and not advocating for Leafy to be unbanned or something like that, I guess you could go for that angle. I'm not going to stop you. But iDubbbz basically bowing down to the YouTube guidelines does not equal him celebrating or supporting Leafy's ban. And it's strange that he was even pointed out here. There were a lot of examples of people supporting Leafy's ban. Asmongold, H3H3, and ProJared to name a few. Why not just criticize those people instead of criticizing the one guy who had a fair take on the matter? Hell, iDubbbz literally said that he tended to like the quote-unquote Wild West of YouTube in the podcast clip. But everyone covering this seems to conveniently leave that out. It's fucking ridiculous. iDubbbz's statements in 2020 doesn't really prove that he's a bad or annoying person. It's just common sense from a person in his position. But his statements later on are where me and other people would start to actually take issue with him. After 2020, iDubbbz's stances on edgy humor in his old videos in general gradually changed, from him simply saying that YouTube's guidelines didn't allow that type of content anymore, to him completely condemning what he used to do, and acting like he was some shitty person for how he acted in his old content. And this change in attitude was mostly seen by his audience when he went on the H3 podcast on April 15th, 2022, where both iDubbbz and H3 talked about changing their content up away from edgy humor.
Well, I think people have the same problem with me. Is it the same problem with you? Yeah. Is that we both used to be like edgy comedians and we were a part of the larger commentary community. And as we've aged, we've realized that, you know, you want to conduct yourself differently.
Well, when you start interacting
caring
with the actual world and you're not in your bedroom creating like sitting in your bedroom for 19 hours creating a hit piece on someone, basically, and you actually interact with human beings, you sort of realize like that isn't really real life.
I think it's very weird watching two people who used to be some of the leading edgy content creators now look back at that humor and pretend that they're better people now, and that they were bad people when they were making said humor. Here's the thing, I don't care that iDubbbz changed his content. His newer stuff isn't interesting anymore, but YouTube probably wouldn't like his edgier content, so I understand that. He had every right to make a change. But I find the moral grandstanding in this H3 interview to be very strange to say the least. If we go back earlier on into this interview, they mentioned a Tana Mojo content cop.
But I mean, I also take ownership for the Tana. The Tana thing was my.
Oh, that was so long ago.
Was my idea. Was my stupid idea. Yeah. I was the one that
suggested like we can go to the place. It's just in San Francisco. I'm like, it is just in San Francisco.
Yeah, that drive and everything. And now I think back to it, I'm like, I can't believe we literally harassed an 18-year-old child.
Everything feels weird about this. First off, Tana shouldn't be described as a child. She's literally 18 years old. Second off, Tana deserved everything she got. Did people not forget the shit that Tana was saying before Ian showed up to her event? You can criticize what Ian did all you want. I don't care. But to act like she didn't do anything and that you were just harassing an 18-year-old child is fucking stupid. Also, to add on to this, Tana made her video response to it and exaggerated every single little fucking detail, which is exactly what Ian expected. She isn't exactly some innocent party. The last thing I want to say about this interview is how both Ian and Anissa act like they've matured and now understand why they were doing was wrong. And I just find this kind of weird. What did Ian do that was wrong exactly? Say slurs? Well, context matters, and Ian wasn't saying anything in a racial context. Make edgy jokes? Well, they're just jokes, so who cares? At the end of the day, his videos were entertainment, and while some of the jokes could undeniably be boundary pushing, it doesn't mean someone is some bad or immature person for it. It shouldn't be taken super seriously. And I feel like Ian's changing stance was bleeding heavily into the content he was trying to make. Before the H3 interview came out, there was a controversy with Ian that involved Sam Hyde and a documentary that Ian was making about him. The biggest issue most people had with the situation, including me, was that it seemed like Ian came into the documentary with the wrong mindset. While Ian did try and refute this point in the documentary itself, a lot of it seemed like he was trying to make a hit piece, specifically the parts of him talking about Sam's jokes. He talked about Sam Hyde's humor and how it wasn't clear when he was being genuine or joking, due to his humor being wrapped in layers of irony essentially, but I feel like a lot of Ian's humor used to be the same way as well. Sure, a lot of it was obvious, but there would be times where Ian would say some outlandish shit and nobody could really tell if it was his real opinion or a joke, and that goes for anyone he used to make videos with as well. The way he mentioned Sam's political jokes as well seemed very weird. It's like he was trying to build up this idea of Sam using irony as a shield for its actual beliefs, when I feel like it isn't that deep. Sam is just a guy that wants to make people laugh. Trying to gain an underlying message from the shit he jokes about is just pointless. The last point I have is about the interview iDubbbz has with Sam towards the end of his documentary. One of the first points he mentions is the fact that Sam had copyright claimed a video Ian had made about a Kickstarter project that Sam was doing.
You remember making a pony game?
Yes.
There were some creators at the time who made videos about this fake pony project.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Were you one of them?
I was one of them.
What did I do?
Do you have any guesses?
Did I say fuck you or something?
No, you copyright claimed the video.
Really?
Yes.
Did I create an enemy with that?
I mean, for a period.
Damn,
I didn't like you.
I'm sorry.
You were an asshole.
I'm sorry, buddy. That's no good.
Yeah, why'd you do that to me?
I don't know. I can't even remember what your video was, so maybe I was pissed off or something. I don't know.
The mentioning of this in the interview is strange. Ian says he didn't care about it, but the entire time he talks about it, it seems like he's been holding a grudge against Sam for some time now. It certainly didn't help that the tension of the video rose significantly after Ian mentioned this. If he didn't care so much about it, he probably wouldn't have gone to Sam about it and mentioned it as one of his first questions. It also didn't help that he said things like, "I'm gonna punk you," and "I'm gonna make you look like an asshole." All things that didn't sound like jokes, but Ian later claimed they were. Wasn't that also a point that Ian criticized Sam for, not being able to tell when things were jokes or not? Then he just goes ahead and does the same thing. It's kind of funny. But to give a quick summary of my thoughts on everything, I don't think iDubbbz is a bad person for changing his content. YouTube changed directions, and most edgier creators had to change in order to continue making a living. But the moral grandstanding about that same humor, and the humor of others, is what I have an issue with. Moving on. This is the most recent controversy that iDubbbz has been involved in, and in order for me to fully explain what went on here, I feel like I should give some context. Creator Clash is a boxing event run by iDubbbz and his girlfriend Anissa, with the first event taking place on May 14th, 2022, and the second event, which is the one we're going to be talking about, taking place on April 15th, 2023. What the events focused on specifically were YouTubers and general social media personalities getting in the ring, with the primary goal to raise money for charity, which doesn't sound so bad. They're raising money for a good cause, and the events should provide a lot of entertainment for people, so what's the issue? Well, that's where one of the former fighters, Froggy Fresh, comes into the picture. He was fighting against Chris Raygun, and when promoting the event, he said this.
"If I don't hurt you beyond what anybody could have imagined, I will be so disappointed in myself that I will subscribe to Anissa's OnlyFans."
This clip resulted in Anissa's mother insulting him for some reason on Twitter, which Froggy Fresh responded to. And after everything, the official Twitter account for Creator Clash announced that Froggy Fresh was no longer gonna fight, with a large amount of backlash following it. To this day, we still don't know exactly why Froggy Fresh was kicked out of the event, and we can only assume based on what happened beforehand. Creator Clash released a statement about everything, but it was really vague and didn't explain anything, other than Froggy Fresh supposedly breaching his contract with him. So we really can only go off the information that we have currently. What it looks like is that Anissa and iDubbbz got mad at Froggy Fresh for making a joke, so they ultimately kicked him out due to it, which is really petty to say the least. iDubbbz was the guy who was known for edgy jokes and pushing the boundaries. He was always willing to poke fun at himself and others. Hell, even during the OnlyFans drama, he said that he had no problem with people joking about it. So why is he and Anissa suddenly against people making jokes? Something this minor shouldn't cause someone to be kicked off a fight that they were putting months of hard work into. If anything, he should have gotten a warning if Ian and Anissa didn't like his behavior. And I don't mean some text saying he's gonna get kicked off like 5 minutes before Creator Clash announced it. I mean an actual warning. The way Froggy Fresh was kicked off of Creator Clash was kind of weird to say the least, which made some people believe that there were other reasons for kicking him off. Earlier on in the video, I talked about the growing tension between Sam Hyde and iDubbbz, mainly due to the documentary Ian was trying to make. And due to this growing tension, Sam Hyde was also banned from attending the first Creator Clash. So why is this relevant? Well, Froggy Fresh was actually being trained by Sam, which might have made things between him and Ian to be shaky to say the least. And while there's no evidence of this being why he got banned, it does make a lot more sense in him being kicked off for making a joke about an OnlyFans account. Though there's no actual evidence for what he actually got kicked off for either. All we can do is speculate. Though there has been no attempts by iDubbbz and anyone else involved in Creator Clash to debunk what's been said. But what it looks like is either Ian not being able to get rid of his grudge against Sam Hyde, or him and Anissa getting mad at a joke. And either way, they look like losers for doing this. But that's about it for this segment. Moving on. Before we discuss iDubbbz's video, I want to talk about one of the main topics of discussion around Creator Clash 2, and the whole controversy surrounding it for a second. Why was Froggy Fresh banned? I speculated in my last video that it could have been for one or two reasons, or maybe even both. That Anissa and Ian got mad at OnlyFans jokes, or they were mad that Froggy Fresh was training with Sam Hyde. And, well, Ian just straight up confirmed in his video during the beginning that training with Sam Hyde was the reason that Froggy got kicked out of the event, which is something I wasn't expecting him to admit, if I'm being honest. Which I guess I can give him props for, but I still have an issue with this. His reasoning for this was not wanting to associate with Sam Hyde, which is understandable. We can't can't force him to like Sam or not, so I have no issue with that. Sam also did say a lot of stuff about him and Anissa in the past, so I could very well understand why they didn't want him involved in their event. But the thing is that Sam wasn't directly involved in the event. He was working with Froggy, sure, but Sam was being Froggy's trainer, and that was the extent of it. So I don't really see the issue here. Why is Ian doing this guilty by association shit? It's not like Froggy himself was the one who was saying these things at the time. That was Sam, so it makes no sense to have this reaction. Plus, ironically, him doing this made Sam more attached to the event and more talked about. If Froggy was never kicked, maybe Sam may have been talked about a little bit in relation to the event. Sure, but it wouldn't have been nearly as much as now. Sam is one of the main talking points of the event now due to Froggy being removed. So good job there, iDubbbz. You really did a good job defending your event and totally didn't fuck things up for yourself. One of Ian's other points in this video was that Froggy throughout the entire process of Creator Clash wasn't civil and behaved badly. And to prove his point, he showed some interview clips of Froggy talking about Creator Clash, which were just him shitting on Ian and Anissa.
For anyone who's under the impression that Froggy has been like reasonable and chill and respectful through this whole process, he hasn't been. He's been a piece of shit. I'm not happy with how he's behaved. He's talked mad shit about me, Anissa, participants of the event itself.
But there's one very important detail that Ian left out that changes up the story a bit. Most of the stuff he showed in the video came out after Froggy was kicked out of the event already, so this just feels very manipulative. If Froggy was shit-talking you and Anissa and causing trouble for the event, I feel like you should have been able to show more examples that were before Creator Clash than what you showed in the video. But someone might make the point that he should have been civil after he got kicked from the event. And to that I say, if you were unjustly kicked from a boxing event that you were actively training for, would you just stay calm about it? I probably wouldn't if I was in his situation. Maybe some people would, but Froggy lashing out in the way he did is completely understandable given the circumstances. But moving on from that, another point Ian made was about him negotiating with Froggy regarding his association about Sam Hyde. He explained that he didn't want Froggy to train with Sam Hyde and didn't want him to make content with Sam either, but he eventually negotiated with Froggy and said that he should just delay his content with Sam.
I got to the point where I was like, okay, I don't want you working or training with Sam Hyde, but you're doing that, so all right, I'll look past it. I don't want you making content with Sam Hyde, but it seems like that's a real deal breaker for you, so I guess I'll look past it. It came to the point where I was like, can you postpone releasing content with Sam Hyde?
And I just find this to be a bit strange. For someone who is very mad about people saying his girlfriend controls him and makes the decisions for him, it's funny that he doesn't see any irony in him trying to do the same exact thing to Froggy. Why he feels the need to be this controlling of his decisions just because Froggy is doing shit with Sam is beyond me. But anyways, Froggy eventually agreed to delay releasing content with Sam, and to my knowledge actually complied with it, which Ian would disagree with me on. Ian claimed that since Froggy made tweets about Sam in the event, that this counted as releasing content. Yes, I'm not joking. This is an actual argument that iDubbbz made.
I don't know why he's saying that he was planning on waiting to post Sam Hyde content. We have the Twitter timeline of him non-stop posting Sam Hyde content. It's fucking weird. I don't know if he thought it was like a loophole to post on Twitter about Sam Hyde. So I think in his head he was like, I was gonna wait to post Sam Hyde content. Parentheses, YouTube video.
Let me put it this way. When most people hear content, they wouldn't normally think Twitter replies and posts. If that counts as content, well, I have over 7,000 posts of content up on my account then. Go follow me, by the way, at DeadMemeFrog. Most people would think that content is YouTube videos. So claiming that he just posted on Twitter as a loophole is weird to say the least. And it just makes it seem like Ian was looking for any reason to kick Froggy out of the event because of Sam. But the last point I want to address from the iDubbbz video is how he painted Froggy Fresh as a person. Because of comments that Froggy made about OnlyFans, Ian's masculinity, Anissa, etc., Ian paints him as someone who doesn't respect women essentially.
No, Froggy, keep going. I think you should keep going. I think the women of the world need to hear your opinions on these things. Talk more about how sex workers are property. That's a funny joke. It was super funny the third time that you referred to women as property.
Which is kind of weird, to be honest. Didn't he make some bad comments towards you and your wife after the fact? Yeah, probably. But that doesn't mean he hates women or something. Hell, Ian himself has said a lot worse about people in his older content. And you'd be hard pressed to find anyone saying he was some massive bully or racist for what he used to do, even at the time he was making the content. So I don't exactly see why you wouldn't give Froggy the same courtesy. But overall, Ian's video was not great to say the least, and perfectly shows how far he's gone from what his previous content represented. The iDubbbz we see now is way different from the iDubbbz we saw back in 2016, and the change is not for the better to say the least. Ian went from an anything goes attitude when it came to comedy to someone who would kick someone off a boxing card just because he didn't like who they were associating with. Real classy, iDubbbz. You really changed for the better, bro. Fucking hell. But anyways, that's it for the section, and I'll end it off by saying this. Free Froggy Fresh. Now, where we ended off in my last video, we talked about iDubbbz's statement about the Froggy Fresh controversy. And interestingly, during the beginning of that video, Ian talked about how he didn't like his older content anymore, and he mentioned potentially making a video about his old content and denouncing it, which he eventually followed through with. When this video initially came out, I decided that even though I didn't like Ian anymore, and at that point I had made 2 videos about him already, I would go into it with an open mind. But even with me being unbiased, I can't help but see the video was very pathetic in many ways, and I'll try to explain why by going over some of the points in Ian's video. Just a quick disclaimer that a lot of what I say in this section may be repeated from my first iDubbbz video, since I'm talking about similar subjects, so let's just get into it. One of the first points that Ian made in his video was about his Content Cop series. Essentially, he claimed that the Content Cop videos were just him morally grandstanding, and that he was criticizing people for very lackluster reasons.
The content I'm talking about specifically are Content Cop videos, and videos where I was just generally criticizing people for very lackluster reasons, and you know, obviously didn't have any accountability online whatsoever on my end. I was morally grandstanding and acting as if I am any better than any of these people that I was making Content Cop videos on, and I'm not.
I get that this just might be a difference of opinion between me and Ian, but I completely disagree with what he's saying here. Let's look at one of the biggest Content Cop videos for an example, the Keemstar video. For the Keemstar Content Cop, Ian criticized Keemstar for many reasons which I wouldn't call lackluster at all, with one of the first points in the video essentially criticizing how Keem handled Pyrocynical slightly criticizing him, for example, which is how the French girl situation became public. There's a reason that the iDubbbz video about Keem is the only one that's looked at positively even years after it came out. The videos that came out from H3, Grade A Under A, Leafy, and Pyrocynical were filled with lies, misinformation, and they all took Keem out of context in certain points. And this is why these videos were essentially forgotten within the first few months of them being uploaded, besides them being criticized by commentators like me years later. The iDubbbz video, however, stood the test of time, and you can even apply the points to Keem nowadays, 7 years after the video was uploaded. So, to get back on track here, I just straight up disagree with this point that the Content Cop series was just moral grandstanding and lackluster criticisms. But moving on from that, another one of the major points in Ian's video was about him being responsible for his audience and how they act generally.
I've just always had this dumb philosophy that I'm not responsible for, you know, my audience and how they behave beyond what content I put out, and that's stupid, and it's led to a lot of hate and a lot of bad outcomes. And I just want to make it clear that I am absolutely responsible for my audience. And you know, I guess if you want to, you know, look out for people who are red flags, it's definitely people who had my mentality that say, I'm not responsible for what my audience does.
With this point, I can sympathize with Ian here. I watched his appearance on Anthony Padilla's channel while researching this video, where he talked about hating his fan interactions, and that he was the cause of his fan base being like that due to the content he made. I can completely understand him not liking his audience. However, him being solely responsible for his audience being like that doesn't hold up very well if I'm being honest. I'd say that it isn't Ian's fault that more edgy content tended to attract some pretty bad people. And even if it was his fault, I'd argue that Ian got too big to be able to control his audience and who watches him, if he was even able to do that in the first place. At his peak of growth, he almost had 8 million subscribers. I've seen people that had a smaller channel than him that weren't even able to control their audiences and who watches them. It's just an unrealistic expectation for Ian to be responsible for his entire audience. And to top this all off, anybody making commentary videos are bound to gain some people in their audience who will harass the targets of videos. It's an unfortunate side effect of criticizing apologizing to anyone on the internet if you have a big audience, and I'd argue that you can't really control this stuff when it happens. The best thing you could do is have something like a harassment disclaimer, but again, if someone was going to harass the target of a video, they were going to do it whether you tell them to or not. But moving on from that, the last thing I want to talk about was him apologizing to Tana Mojo, specifically for the Content Cop episode about her, which didn't age too well, and I'll go over how that didn't age well in a second, but I want to show the clip of Ian apologizing to her for context first.
I particularly want to apologize to Tana. Tana, I'm sorry. I should have never made that video. I harassed Tana in person and then harassed her online, and that's deplorable behavior. It's so stupid.
This part kinda confused me for several reasons, but let me just say this flat out. Tana did not deserve an apology for what Ian did at her event back in 2017. And to prove this, let's look at what Tana did specifically before the event happened that was directed towards iDubbbz, because she is by no means some innocent party throughout all of this. Tana was the one who started the drama between the two when she made tweets telling iDubbbz to kill himself because of his use of a certain word, which I won't mention here for monetization reasons. Yes, I am money hungry, leave me alone. She then said on a live stream, and I'm not joking when I say this, that if iDubbbz broke both of his legs and lost all of his subscribers, then she would be happy. And she continued to belittle iDubbbz from there, claiming that his use of a certain word earlier was bad no matter the context, while also saying something arguably offensive herself if you ignore the context. Please tell me where Tana didn't at least have a response from Ian coming. She was saying some pretty ridiculous things about Ian and how he was this terrible person all because he said some mean words online. Coupled with the fact that she said the word that she was mad about Ian in an actual derogatory context, let me ask again, when exactly did Tana not deserve what happened to her? And this iDubbbz apology gets even worse when we take a look at Tana's response, where she said that she deserved the content cop. So this apology is just meaningless. But that's pretty much all I have to say for this video. Sorry this was a long section, but I had a lot to say about these specific points alone. Moving on. Now, I've talked about Creator Clash 2 in every single video in this series so far, but I promise that even if this isn't my final iDubbbz video, it probably will be, but that's beside the point, this will be my last time talking about this. I thought it was important to speak on some of the updates in the situation though, considering how big the updates to this actually were. So let's get into it. On July 3rd, Ian released a video called The Harsh Reality of Creator Clash 2, where he talked about a lot of the hardships with handling the event. But the main one that got people talking was that Creator Clash 2 had a net loss of $250,000. Not only that, but the event sold half of the pay-per-view events that the first one did, making this event a complete failure compared to the first one. There's been a lot of talk about this, including the Froggy Fresh controversy coming back in the conversation, as that's one of the supposed reasons why Creator Clash failed. But I don't think that was one of the reasons. Unrelated, but one of my friends decided to just call me Froggy Fresh for the past few months for whatever reason. I just thought that was funny. Back to the video. No offense to Froggy, but he hasn't been super relevant on YouTube since about 2016. I doubt that a huge amount of the tickets were there exclusively for him. I do think the controversy put a bad light on the event overall, as the entire reason for Froggy being removed from the event wasn't revealed until after it was over in the first place. But this wasn't nearly big enough to affect the entire event in the way that some would think. Now, what I think killed this event compared to the first Creator Clash are the people that Anissa and iDubbbz got to fight this time around. Let's look at some of the people that they got for the first Creator Clash. The Odd Ones Out, Matt Watson, Michael Reeves, Justin Minks. These four people all have big audiences and had enough of a pull to bring people to the event, due to their fan bases being curious of what they would do in a boxing ring. And this is why the first Creator Clash was so successful. Now let's take a look at the roster for the second one. There were some names that people knew, but not as many as last time. Coupled with the fact that there were more fighters and more expenses in general to get the second event going, there's no wonder why it failed the way it did. I'd also say that the novelty of the first Creator Clash event was pretty much lost when the second one came around. The thing that made the first event so appealing, to me at least, is that creators who were never interested in fighting were pushed out of their comfort zone. None of these people on these cards had any fighting experience, so it made things pretty interesting for a little while. But this novelty eventually wore off, and now I'd say that people much prefer seeing people who take fighting a bit more seriously. The worst part about everything concerning this event is that charities weren't able to get money. At least, not initially anyways. iDubbbz ended up doing a charity livestream on Twitch to raise the lost money from the event so that the charities could actually get the money from it. So, things are solved there. But it is pretty sad to see the event fall flat on its face like this, especially as someone who was a former fan of iDubbbz and used to watch all his content all the time when I was younger. But that's pretty much all I have to say here in this section. Moving on. The story of iDubbbz is one that will continue to get worse over time, as Ian continues to alienate his fanbase and pushes away everyone who's been watching him for the past decade or so. It's a sad story, but an interesting one nonetheless. Over the past few months, he's been digging himself a bigger and bigger hole with every decision he makes, which has been chronicled by commentary YouTubers like myself. And I don't doubt that he'll continue to get criticized and ridiculed after this point, with some reasons being valid and some pretty stupid, but for now, I think I'm done with the topic. I've said everything I could possibly say about Ian without completely retreading the old points I've made, so I'll just leave it here. Thanks to everyone who waited for more videos. Sorry for taking a 2-month break, but I got massively burnt out after trying to make YouTube videos weekly, and I needed to reevaluate things for my channel. I'm back now though, and things should be returning to normal from here on out, so be on the lookout for newer videos. I also have a podcast with my friend Spinling and my second channel, both will be in the description of this video. I also have a join button if anyone wants to click that, and with that, I'll be taking my leave. I'll see you in the next video. Oh yeah, one last thing. #FLM.